Not so many years ago, kids wanted Lionel trains for Christmas the way kids want computer games today. They say back then it was a simpler time, a more respectful time, when families played together and fathers and sons built train layouts. There were no Nike shoes, but there were flexible flyer sleds, Daisy BB guns, Schwinn bikes with fat tires, and Lionel trains. In 1953, Lionel was the country's largest toy company, and receiving Lionel trains for Christmas had become an American tradition. When Lionel's founder, Joshua Lionel Cowan, died, the New York Times observed that Cowan had firmly established Lionel as the third wing of Christmas, right along with Santa Claus and the Christmas tree. Pretty good company for a toy. Today, there seems to be a yearning for that simpler, more respectful time when no one played computer games and the only ranger we knew was the Lone Ranger. Back when Lionel trains topped every boy's Christmas list. So we decided to talk to some people who grew up just before or just after World War II and ask them what they remember about a Lionel Christmas. Michael Brilson of New York City remembers.
It is all so clear in my mind. It was just before World War II. Christmas morning, getting a new Lionel train. I would lie on the carpet and watch the trains go around the presents. There was a steam locomotive, heavy, metal, nothing like the toys kids have today, and a boxcar. A silver tank car, a red caboose with a light, and my favorite, the coal dump car. I use marbles. Oh, and the gate man. Every time the train passed, he popped out of his shack, waved his red lantern, then snapped back. My pals would come over to play. Whomever had the biggest box would carry his trains over to the other guy's house, and we put our sets together. What a great, great time that was. I think one of the steps of growing up for a little boy is the setting up of his own electric train set for the first time. Joining the tracks, connecting the wires, oiling the engine, carefully setting the train onto the track, plugging the transformer cord into the wall, turning on the transformer, moving the lever, and lo and behold, everything worked. Trains speeding over the tracks, sparks flying, the headlights on the rails like sabers flashing in the night. Then there were the sounds, the wheels on the rails, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, so distinctive, so memorable. Oh, and the great train wrecks. We'd run the trains together at top speeds and see how far we could get them to fly off the track, sometimes even into the kitchen. In those days, we were radio heads. We listened to words and used our imagination. Same with the toy trains. We would watch our trains and dream of real trains. Trains racing through the night, taking people to distant towns and cities. A Lionel Christmas? Yes, I remember. I'll never forget.
Phil Ambrose is an accomplished artist. He plays the drums, keyboard, piano, and sings too. Phil also has an affection for Lionel Trains.
If anybody knows me, they say, the first thing they say, Phil Ambrose, Phil Ambrose. Yes, he's a drummer. He's a musician. He's a recording artist. He does this, he does that. Big deal. But you know what people say before they say that Phil Ambrose? He's a train nut. The guy's a psychopath. He's a lunatic. When it comes to trains, this guy is nuts. And let me tell you, I am nuts. I love trains. On Christmas Eve, when the snow was coming down, and you were up in the bedroom, and you're peeking down, and you just could imagine that set of Lionel Santa Fe going around that Christmas tree. And with all the lights twinkling, and I'll tell you, that was my biggest dream. I never got those Santa Fe trains I always dreamed about because I was brought up in Brooklyn, New York, and home of the great Brooklyn Dodgers, and I was brought up by these, how shall I say, I'm an Italian-American. I was born over here in this magnificent country, so were my parents, but they were raised with the Italian tradition, and they thought that everything had to be, we had to toe the line exactly, we had to get an education, we had to be very, very serious, and the mere thought of asking for trains, it's insanity, complete insanity. Now, if you ask for a saw, or if you ask for something else that pertained to working, they were ecstatic, but trains out of the question. So I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And guess who finally got me that Santa Fe set that I always dreamed of all my life? My wife, Joanna, who to me is the greatest thing that ever walked on the face of this earth. You know why? One thing, I happen to love her, and I know she loves me. I hope so. But she tolerates this insanity that I do. I mean, I have 26 sets of trains running simultaneously, and I wish I had 226 sets, and I will. I love trains. My father, who came to live with me after my mother passed away, he saw these trains running around the tracks, the whistles blowing, the smoke coming out of the stacks. It was fantastic. I even got him an engineer's hat. You know what he said to me? He says, you know, Phil, I never told you this. He says, I had to work, I had to make a living, I had to raise children, I had to be serious. I couldn't enjoy the things that people enjoy today, but all my life, I too wanted a set of those Lionel trains. Isn't that unbelievable? All these years, my pop had the same dreams I had, but we never even talked about it. Anyway, the bottom line is, I got Lionel trains now, and baby, as far as I'm concerned, I'm gonna have them till the day I drop dead. I love them.
After talking about his Lionel trains, Phil was so inspired, he wrote a song. It's called, appropriately, A Lionel Christmas.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's magic, it's a Lionel Christmas. I'm wishing for a Lionel Christmas. Everyone has so much joy. Lionel train for every boy. Lights glowing, it's a Lionel Christmas. Whistles blowing, it's a Lionel Christmas. I am hoping that I will see a Lionel train under my tree. Hey, now Santa comes and he brings his Christmas magic. Choo-choo toys give everyone such joy. I am dreaming of a Lionel Christmas. I'm beaming, it's a Lionel Christmas. There ain't no way I'm gonna sleep tonight, and I hope Santa gets my address right.
Mark Gordon, currently Lionel's Vice President of Marketing, started training for his job a long time ago.
I can still remember Christmas 1953 when I received my Lionel train set. I didn't even have to take the paper off. I knew the shape of the box. And when I saw that shaped package there, I knew that I'd gotten what I really wanted that Christmas. And I can remember later that year working with my father, building the 4x8 table. I'd wanted that more than anything else around. I can remember talking with my father for the months leading up to Christmas, and he'd tease me and say, well, maybe we should get one of those HO trains, and I go, no, Dad, I want a Lionel. We got up Christmas morning, the family walked down the hall, Santa had been there, all the gifts were under the tree. The train was not set up, it was boxed. But I knew the size and the shape of the box, and there was only one thing I wanted that came in a box shaped like that, and I was not disappointed. I still have it, a 2026 steamer. It is retired, it runs, but it's been retired to a display case of honor in my office. I had the log dump car, the coal car, although a lot of my memories of running that train included all the other toys that I had as a child, the little cars, the little trucks, Lincoln logs. Obviously, like all boys my age, we'd build barriers on the track, turn all the lights out, and watch that headlight as it approached that pile of logs and just smashed them all over the place. The train made many trips from the tabletop to the basement floor and back up, and it bears those scars, but like a true Lionel train, it kept coming back for more. It was as tough as the boys that played with it, and I look at those now and they're really kind of battle scars, and there's a memory behind each scratch on that locomotive. Every Christmas and every birthday, yes, I'd always watch for an orange box to show up because it was one more thing that we could go down and put on that layout.
I was probably around 4 or 5. Trains were just a big part. It was the whole Christmas to me. And every Christmas, my parents would have our Santa's bag, and there'd always be an addition to my Lionel set. I still have my first Lionel train. It's a 2046 freight set that my dad bought before I was born for Christmas. My uncles, my dad played with it when I was too little to play with it yet, and they broke it about 3 times before I ever got a chance to play with it. When I was younger, I remember I couldn't touch it. It was underneath the tree, but I couldn't touch it until my dad got home. And he would run it and I'd watch it. I still have it. It's sitting on a shelf. I got my second set when I was probably about 8 years old, which was a 2020 freight set. I still have that one also. Catalogs were a daily thing. I remember I got caught taking one to school one time, and it was a big punishment for me. But that was what I dreamed of, just looking at the catalogs to see what I was going to get for next Christmas. Lay down on the floor all the way and just watch it come around the bend, eye level. I had a short little tunnel, and watch that headlight come through the tunnel. It was very exciting. Always under the tree. The tree was always in the center. And they only came out at Christmas, and they stayed out the short time after Christmas, and we packed them all away in the boxes. And then playing with trains many hours at Christmas. That was my whole Christmas vacation when I was little from school. Just play with my trains. I could be content just doing that. There's a lumber loader, and the coal loader, and of course the milk car. That was very popular, and a rotating beacon, which was just outstanding at night, with the Christmas tree lights on and a rotating beacon going around. It was just great. Yep, all 49 years are still there, and I still do it every Christmas. I put a layout underneath the tree. I still enjoy it.
I found my old train set a couple of years back, and boy, did the memories come flooding back. Christmas, a Lionel train. I remember the buzzes, the buzz of the engine when it went from forward to reverse, the buzz of the couplers uncoupling, the operating boxcar, the milk car, log loaders and coal loaders, and the bascule bridge. Oh, that bridge. The red light on top, the little house. I loved that bridge. I remember the boxes too, and opening a Lionel box was all part of the mystery. You had to be careful not to tear a flap or a tab because Dad said these were special toys and had to be packed away in their original boxes. There was always an envelope filled with connectors and wires and instructions. I had no idea what the instructions meant. There were straight lines and right angles and different letters, and all very mysterious. But Dad knew how to hook everything up. Eventually, I learned too. I remember how thrilled I was when I hooked up my first street light. Then there were the lights. The headlight on the engine, the lights of the switches going from red to green. The caboose had a light, and of course the passenger cars. The searchlight car always flickered as it went around the track. And oh, how neat the room looked with all the lights out and the trains running. I would just stand there and stare at it. It took my breath away. Another great thing was the catalogs. Oh boy, those catalogs. The illustrations were so perfect. I studied and savored each page. Everything looked so massive and strong. And as you got deeper into the catalog, the trains appeared even more magnificent because all the expensive stuff was in the back. The mighty GG1, the gorgeous Santa Fe, the big steamers puffing smoke in the long, long passenger cars. And then would come the accessories. I memorized every page, visualized them on my layout. I dreamed about my favorite sets. Those illustrations have stayed in my memory for almost 50 years, and they are as vivid today as they were when I was 10. Passenger cars were good in the dark, but you could play with freight cars. You could put soldiers in the gondolas, Lincoln logs in the hoppers, and barrels in the boxcars. And the great stuff that came with cars: wooden barrels, logs, pipes, things of strength and substance, things that had a smell and a feel to them, things that a boy could play with. Another thing I'll never forget is the smoke. It came right out of the smokestack. What a sensational invention. All you needed was Lionel smoke pellets. They came in a bottle. You'd drop one or two in the smokestack and boom, like magic, smoke came out. Could there be anything better in the whole world? The dump cars were great. The coal dump, the log dump. I like to put soldiers on the log dump and flip them into the air. It all made for about as much excitement as my 10-year-old heart could take. And boy, do I have a good time when my grandson comes over. Heck, I have a good time when my grandson doesn't come over.
I was 4 years old in 1946. I got my first set, and I remember that Christmas above all others, really. I was sick that Christmas, and some of the toys I got, one in particular, the 027 train set on a piece of plywood, was one of the greatest things I ever got. 1949, I guess, I saw the Santa Fe 2333, and I really wanted that one, and I ended up getting that one for Christmas in '49. And that I put on a layout in the basement. I played with that for hours and hours, year after year. I guess the Santa Fe war bonnet colors really got me. Now I'm into steam. I wish I had asked for that 773 or the big Hudson maybe the following year, but I'm glad I've got the 2333 now, and it's still in real good shape. Because I ran them off the track, and it did a lot of banging around. I never oiled anything. It's showing up now. It's having a new wheel put on it right now. But since then, I started coming to the shows, and I bought 7 more steam engines, a lot of cars. I'm starting to clean my basement out. Wintertime, that's all I do is mess with the trains. My wife thinks I'm crazy. I cleared out enough space in the basement to where I got a 6x10 carpet down there. With all the track I can squeeze in that area, and 8 switches. I get 2 trains running, and I've got all my accessories hooked up. It's like a little kid, 52 years old, and I can still go down there and sit on the rug with my trains and have a ball. The catalogs were fantastic. They really did a good job on drawing you, make you want to get the stuff. Every Christmas, I couldn't wait to get down to our Firestone store and get the new Lionel catalog. Sure. Oh my God. When I was a kid, I guess it was the electrical, something moving, making something move. But right now, I think it's the nostalgia of those were good years when I was young, and I really enjoyed the trains.
Those were good times. Families ate dinner together. Mom stayed home. Dad went to work and sat at the head of the table. Winters were fun. We built a snowman, gave him a broom and a straw hat, and used pieces of coal to make him smile. We had snowball fights, and somehow it was always good packing. Dads wore snappy hats. The wash was hung outside on a clothesline. Planes had propellers. And buying a new car was a major event. We were taught good manners, and to extend courtesies, and to be respectful of one another. People dressed better, and grass was mowed with a push mower. Workers took pride in their work, and most things, including bicycles and carnival rides, seemed better, lasted longer. We knew all about the Red Ryder and played cowboys until Mom called us in for dinner. Things just seemed nicer, gentler, more tasteful. And at Christmas time, electric trains ran around the Christmas tree.
Every Christmas I'd get presents. You'd get clothes and toys and different stuff. But I always knew that somewhere underneath the Christmas tree was another present for my train set. And every year the train set got bigger and bigger. For a number of years I put the train set away as I got interested in cars and girls, but that bug was still lurking around, and by the time I rolled around 35 years old, rummaging around in the closet, I came across my train set. I pulled it out, showed it to my wife, said how neat it was when we used to set these things up, and realized that I still like trains quite a bit. Later I was introduced to train clubs and found out that there was a whole sea of people out there that were interested in Lionel trains and three-rail track, and the whole exciting world opened up to me again. And so every year we started setting up another train layout. So this layout is done on 1/2 inch plywood, and the second layout is done on 3/4 inch plywood that's put up on stilts. We got two towns, one called Bruceburg and one called Gauntville. Gauntville is on the upper portion and Bruceburg is on the lower portion. All of the track on the layout is Super O. Now, my dad got me Super O when I was probably about 12 years old. I just loved the realistic ties and the very thin center rail. There's also a trolley track that runs through Gauntville in a circular pattern with a very noisy Lionel trolley, and a switch that'll divert the trolley off over a bridge to a third imaginary town where it actually hits a bumper and then comes back and goes back through Gauntville again. The town itself is modeled after Bedford Falls in It's a Wonderful Life, the Jimmy Stewart movie. I wanted to give the town the kind of feeling of warmth, happiness, winter, Christmas, carols, all the traditional things that make up Christmas. The buildings in the town are primarily plastic-built buildings that I was given when I was a kid, and the winter trees are made from baby's brush and other dried flowers and plants that were bound together and then sprayed with white snow. The evergreen trees One primarily in the middle of the city was decorated for Christmas using tiny LEDs, red, green, and yellow lights, and then a whole bunch of little ornaments put on them individually. All the light posts have garlands for Christmas, and the town is absolutely packed with hundreds of Christmas shoppers. Also, the train station is populated with many, many visitors leaving town and many, many visitors coming. I wanted to give the feeling of people coming home for the holidays, and so I have completely packed the station with as many people as possible. In total, there are probably about 250 to 300 people scattered around the layout. The engines and rolling stock on this layout are from a variety of sources, although I try to keep it basically in the 1950s time period. Most people don't realize these trains still exist, and so it's always a real joy to see fathers talk about buying train sets for their kids when they walk out the door and asking where they might be able to buy pre-rail products and Lionel products from their hobby shops. One of the favorite trains of visitors when they come over is the Lionel General and passenger cars. And I've done quite a bit of work on this engine. I put in a special headlight on the front that casts a good long beam. I put silhouettes in the passenger cars. I've added sound effects and couplers, and it's always a thrill to run this train. It runs very slowly and very reliably, and we've used it for the entire 3 years.
I was about 5, so maybe it was 1947. But I know in later years we would turn the tree lights off just so that we could see the engine headlight come around that curb, you know, kind of glow or glint off the rails and come around and then come right at you, you know, and we were still kids, you know, and it was just wonderful. Those little pills, you know, that you can't get anymore, we put them in there and it just would chuff away, and it had a horn or a whistle. My parents at the time, you know, I think they spent quite a bit of money for that train. Not too long ago, I just talked with my dad, he's still alive, and I think he spent close to $90. And I didn't really make any distinction between Lionel or American Flyer. I just knew I wanted an electric train. I had a merchandise car. I have a Sunoco 2-dome tanker, a coal dump car, and then, of course, that Pennsylvania caboose. I have it, and it's in good running order. It sat in a box for years and collected dust and everything, and I finally took that over to a friend, and he maintenanced that entire set. It took him a while, but he took every car and the engine, the tender, everything, and it works. It's like new. It doesn't look like new. I mean, it's in good shape, but not perfect. Okay. But it runs, and it works. Yeah, it's nice looking. As a boy, I mean, that engine was so heavy. Yeah, that's part of it. Substantial. It didn't break. I mean, we played with it. It would go off the track. It never fell. It's never been dropped. But, you know, it would derail. Nothing ever broke. As far as I was concerned, everything worked perfectly. Yeah, I played with it and until I lost all of the little black boxes that used to shoot out of there. I don't have those. I'm looking for them, but they're tough. Maybe I'll be able to find them. And the coal car, played with that. Got coal everywhere. We'd fill it up and try to dump it into that hopper or that, you know, that little receiver that it had. But we always got it all over the tracks, all over the carpeting. And I bought a TM book just to see what it was worth and wonder what the trains was worth. And I started looking at all the trains that have been made since that and all the different things that they've done, and I just started getting interested. And it took me a while to dig out the old train and get it cleaned up and all, but once that started, once I had that done, then I just thought I'd start adding cars. And I actually looked at trains at the shows for a long time before I spent $1. I looked and looked, probably a year and a half. I just couldn't decide what I wanted to buy or where I wanted to go with it.
A little partial to some of the post-war stuff, and I still tried to get what I can of that. But even the newer trains now are coming out with much better quality. The detail is good on them. I think nostalgia is part of it, but it's interesting because I don't think kids get bored with it, and I don't really know why that is. You can change the layouts, you can move them around, you can do things with them. They don't have to stay the same. You can reconstruct them at Christmas time if you have a permanent layout. I guess there is no such thing as really a permanent layout because you can change them all the time and just adapt them the way you want to adapt them. And I think that's really That's really it. That's really part of it. I've got a semi-permanent layout for myself that is not completed, but like I say, with the grandchildren coming along, we're going to be doing a little bit of that now. Starting there just at that age where we can get back into that. So that's something I'm looking forward to right now.
Started probably 60 years ago, because I'm 67 now, and my folks got me a Lionel steam train. Can't remember the number on it, but with 3 or 4 cars, and I just loved it. And every Christmas, of course, we would set it up. Well, after 2 Christmases, why, it became something permanent on a, I think, a 4x8 plywood table in the basement. Things were added, and in those days they didn't have the electronic toys, but we sure had electric trains, and they were wonderful. I would want things such as accessories, gates and a station and things that would light up and so on. I wish I had all the catalogs from way back. I wish I had the trains from way back, because they would be very valuable, and of course they had a lot of wonderful memories. Lionel always had the quality. I had a friend who had American Flyer, which I didn't feel was quite the quality, but they had a wonderful niche too. And one of the things you could do was mix accessories and so on, and so we had a lot of fun playing together with the various trains. Yeah. I thought Lionel was better. It was quality. And if you had a problem with it, you'd go back to the dealer where you got it, which I think was a bike store that doubled in Lionel. And he'd take care of it. He'd fix it for you. He'd do those things. He had it set up around the tree in the typical introductory electric train way. It was quite a thrill. And of course, I think at that time, the electric lights and then a passenger train, and you'd visualize yourself in a train going on a trip somewhere. It was fun. The burning smell that you would get, it was fun.
I don't know when it was, probably about 1946 or 47. My dad bought me a Mark set just before Christmas, and we used to set that up around the tree. And then, I don't know, a few years down the road, maybe 51 or 52, from a friend of mine, his father bought out a fire sale in a hobby store, and I ended up with my Lionel. It was a 681 with the Silver Dawn series cars. And the aluminum was dirty, and I cleaned it up, and then my dad built me a board, and he made a homemade fence around it so the trains wouldn't fall off. We set it up probably the following Christmas, and we were running this with the Marx transformer. And Christmas Eve it burned out, and we ran out to someplace on Madison and Central Park, and the guy was closing, and my dad made him open the door, and he bought me a RS transformer. I'll never forget that, and I had my train for Christmas. When you get older, you fall away from it. Probably when I was 17, 16, cars came to me and the trains went away, and in fact, it wasn't until 1968, my second Christmas or Thanksgiving, I was married. We had Thanksgiving at our house, and I needed a big table. I went to my dad's house, and I got my train. He gave me my train board, which I didn't realize at the time what it was. And after Thanksgiving, I was looking at it, and I was figuring out where all this stuff. There was houses, the hospital from Plasticville, and I had 6 of the Marx double street lights on it. I think 1 pair of switches. And then I had this tender. It didn't have the cover on it, and these cars didn't have ends, so I looked up Lionel in the phone book, and I ended up over at Pirate Paints on Belmont and Central. And I walked in there to buy I got my tender top, and I got some ends for my cars, plus I bought a brand new 2383 Santa Fe, and I bought a ZW transformer, and it's been downhill. And my wife says she doesn't know why she ever let me go there to begin with, so.
1933, when I was born, my dad had to run out and get a Lionel Jr. set with the little red engine and the little cars. I remember that. It had the little latch couplers. They were kind of irritating for little hands to put together. But it was a nice train. And then in '41, he upgraded me to a 1666 freight set. When I was 8 years old, this thing was monstrous. It was big and heavy. The way it's built, the mechanical, the metal it's made out of, and its design, it's nice. There's no mechanical ability in a Nintendo set. I took my 1666 apart. I think I was 9 years old. Stripped it, took it all apart, and put it back together, and had no problem. You go to Sears or Marshall Fields or the Fair store or the Boston store, the Lionel and American Flyer displays were phenomenal. They were huge, with trains all over the place and people standing 5, 10 deep. If you were little, you had to either stand on your father's shoulders or sneak up and to get your face against the glass. It isn't like that today. The kids today just don't have what we had in those days, the bells, the clanging and all. It was a special time, Christmas was, and I don't think that'll ever come back. I have an affection for taking an engine that would probably have gone years ago into the garbage and redoing it, and then you're going to have to add parts, you're going to have to fix, file, and rewire. But when you get done, it comes pretty close to the way it looked originally, and it's a nice piece. The problem with that is, let's say I'm going to buy it for cheap, and then I'll sell it for a few dollars more, and you fall in love with it, and there it goes in a box on a shelf, and you're loaded again with 1,000 681s or 3 dozen 736s, and that's what happens. He gave me the 2660 crane car. I would spend an hour and never touch the car with my bare hands and put that whole train on the track using this crane car alone. What else could you do when there's snowy weather outside, nobody else to play with? This is what you played with, was your trains. Well, it's what Christmas seemed to be. The sleds and Santa Claus and the electric train, because of the way they sold the electric train. It was the toy of Christmas, and that's the way it is, and that'll be the way it remains with me until the end.
In 1943, my dad bought a 226E with the Blue Comet cars, and we had a freight set, and he built a layout on a piece of 4x8 plywood. It was on a board, and the Christmas tree was like to the left. I just remember that there were 4 switches. I don't remember what accessories. There were a couple of working lights, you know, the blinking light on and off, and I think there was a station on there. Probably would have been a 115 station. I used to like to get down, lay down on the floor and watch the train run towards you. You'd get down at the edge of the board, like all kids do. And of course, the 226 had a light in it, no smoke, but did have a whistle. To a kid, I think it was the action, that the things moved. But when you had a train, you could run that for a long period of time, and it worked. And I had a 97 coal loader and a 397 coal loader, and I had bascule bridge and things of that type. They weren't made out of paper, they weren't made out of wood, they were substantial toys. I remember when the steam locomotive, when they came out with smoke, to me that was really a major innovation. And of course the automatic couplers after the war performed far better than the box coupler pre-war. So, and they were much more realistic because it was a knuckle coupler. And you could uncouple the cars and make up your trains and do everything that you wanted. Just like a real engineer.
Christmas morning, I was not allowed to get out of bed until everybody was up. I came running into there, and there was a 258 in the Associated Freight cars, and you talk about a kid being excited. I was jumping up and down, and I just thought my parents were the great. I still do think they're the greatest people in the world. I was just flabbergasted at the time. Still runs great. I still have it all. Every Thanksgiving or so, when the stores would put on their Christmas displays, I'd go up to the train displays, get the catalogs, and watch them operate for hours. At Christmas time, that's where you found me in the store. It was by the trains. I had a Scout set I bought myself, I think, with my paper route money around 1949. And then a couple of years later, I picked up a Union Pacific Streamliner set. I still like steamers, though. Since the 258 didn't have smoke in that, we'd stick a little cigarette butt in the chimney, and it smoked for us. I remember seeing the automatic milk car, and I thought it was so neat. And that Christmas, there was one a new one sitting under the tree for me. The fact that it was something that would operate and wouldn't break. And I've always been fascinated by anything mechanical, trains especially, and that's why I like the steam engines. You can see all the movements of the pistons, and some of the kids still like that kind of stuff, but others are, they're into the video games and all that, which is good for their future, but I think there still is a big fascination with trains with kids today. I'm seeing more of it. I've got great nephews and nieces, and they're interested in the trains.
Never saw the train until actually at Christmas, and it was part of Christmas. Christmas started, the tree went up. After the tree was assembled, then my brother and I would get to set our trains up around the tree. We were given a Scout set as a Christmas present one year and told to share. So as I say, Christmas and trains always were hand in hand at the Potter family. I think Lionel, they relied heavily on that Christmas charm and the dream. Everything from the color of the trains, the way they were designed and packaged. We saw it on TV, we saw it in the newspapers. We wanted a train, and we got one. The next Christmas came a Seaboard set, little freight set. But Santa Claus brought my father a 623 switcher. And we were told not to play with that, but after that, then we started building layouts in the basement. I would spend all my daydreaming hours wondering how to design a machine that would allow me to aim it at a trackside signal and shrink it down so I could put it on my layout, because as children, we didn't have the monies to go out and to buy these things. We relied on the generosity of Santa Claus. And as we turned to teenagers, girls, cars, other things took over. But as I got into the 70s, it was right around Christmas. I'm coming home from work one day. I see there's going to be a little train show up in Grays Lake at the Lake County Fairgrounds. I go in. For $30, I buy a real simple little 1666 pre-war freight set. That was the first one I bought for myself. And from there on, you can see what's in the basement. Even today, I still kind of wonder about that little machine to shrink stuff down. And it's there at the basis, I think, for all of us, because once again, Christmas morning, there was nothing more fun than getting a train.
My father's father was an engineer for the New York Central. My mother's father was a conductor on the Twilight Limited. He worked for New York Central for over 50 years. When I was little, in the early 50s, my parents and I would frequently board the Twilight Limited in Detroit, Michigan, and ride this train to my mother and father's hometown of Jackson, Michigan. Trains were an early part of my life. So it seemed natural that on Christmas morning, 1952, there was a Lionel train for me from my dad under the tree. This wasn't any simple train set. This was a black New York Central Hudson, just like my grandfather's. My dad also gave me all kinds of cars. I remember the cattle car, the milk car, and especially the passenger cars. They had lights and silhouettes of people in the windows. After we opened all the boxes, my dad disappeared into the basement to confront and conquer the toy train world of wiring, track, plywood, switches, semaphores, and crossing gates. That evening, he escorted my mother and me down the steps and switched off the lights. Instantly, I fell in love. The train moved as if by magic around this world in miniature my dad had created. My father let me play with the train whenever I wanted. Suddenly, I was the most popular kid in the neighborhood, despite being only 4. Everyone loved our train, and it is a tribute to my father's generosity and spirit that he allowed all those children to play with our train. My dad died when I was 23, long before I married Tom McComas. My dad would have enjoyed and delighted in sharing his love of trains with Tom. We're continuing the family tradition. This is our son, Jeff. He's 3 years old, has his own train layout, and not surprisingly, he's the most popular kid in our neighborhood.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's magic, it's a Lionel Christmas. I'm wishing for a Lionel Christmas. Everyone has so much joy. Lionel train for every boy. Lights glowing, it's a Lionel Christmas. Whistles blowing, it's a Lionel Christmas. I am hoping that I will see a Lionel train under my tree. Hey, now Santa comes and he brings his Christmas magic. Choo-choo toys give everyone such joy. I am dreaming of a Lionel Christmas. I'm beaming, it's a Lionel Christmas. There ain't no way I'm gonna sleep tonight, and I hope Santa gets my address right. It's magic, it's a Lionel Christmas. I'm wishing for a Lionel Christmas. Everyone has so much joy. I hope there is a Lionel. I hope there is a Lionel. And I hope there is a Lionel. I hope there is a Lionel under my Christmas tree.